There was calamity in the University of Lagos earlier this week when the school's governing council resolved at its emergency meeting in Abuja to sack Professor Oluwatoyin Ogundipe over allegations of infractions and gross misconduct. Hours after his removal, the school's governing council appointed an acting vice-chancellor, Theophilus Soyombo. Well, the defamed former vice-chancellor has responded to his removal, saying this move was based on mischievous disinformation because the extant provisions of the law were not complied with by the council. Well, joining us now to clear the air on the issue is the school's Pro-Chancellor, Wale Babalakin. Glad to have you, Wale.
Very much.
Good.
I'm happy to be here.
Good, fantastic. Let's start this way with the supposedly sacked Vice-Chancellor Ogundipe saying that even if his purported sack were true or is true, the extant provisions of the law have not been complied with by the council which you had.
Well, I'm very grateful that I have this opportunity to explain what happened. Most people who have made comments about the sacking of Professor Ogundipe have not read the law. And some of them have read outdated laws. At your opening statement, you mentioned that you required the visitor through the Senate to remove the Vice-Chancellor. That was an old law. If you read the University Miscellaneous Act of 2009, the visitor has no role in the removal of Vice-Chancellors. It's a decision of council. And if the Vice-Chancellor believes that he hasn't been removed properly, the appropriate thing to do under the law, as stated in the law, is for him to write an appeal to the visitor. The Vice-Chancellor claiming that he has not been sacked is illegal because he is not in a position to say that. The Vice-Chancellor holding rallies and making comments is wrong, is failure of process. What the Vice-Chancellor can do is to go write a letter of appeal to the visitor and not turn university system to rabble-rousing. And I also got information recently that the Vice-Chancellor claims that he has briefed a lawyer to go to court. This means he has, in addition to being removed, he has resigned. Because you can't use university resources, sitting in a university platform, now challenge your employer in the courts. Once you do that, you have to step aside. So apart from being removed by the university, he has also stepped aside. Thank you.
Pro-Chancellor, it's very good to see you again. We were able to somewhat ambush you as you returned into Lagos at the airport yesterday.
Thank you.
And we wanted to ask you, before we get into the mechanical aspect of whether or not this decision is lawful, depending on who we speak to, how did we get here? If you can level up and clear up the allegations against Professor Ogundipe so we can see what it is, what the crux of the issue is right now. I'm
a lawyer. I'm not given to making loose statements. Whatever I say, I must be able to back up. Professor Ogundipe was accused of financial recklessness. And I can boldly say that you cannot find any actions of Ogundipe that followed the proper process. Professor Ogundipe spent 49 million renovating his residence, which a former vice-chancellor had just left, was in excellent shape, without mentioning it to anybody, without even mentioning, not to talk of seeking approval. It was a committee of the full university that discovered it. Professor Ogundipe, in a very complicit manner, gave 41 million to the bossa to renovate his premises. The bossa's house can be built from scratch for 41 million. We struggled to have Professor Ogundipe management give us a proper account. Every single account that has been submitted by Ogundipe is false with fundamental errors. All the accounts are cooked and not a presentation of the fair representation of the university books. Professor Ogundipe, I'm sure, is the only vice-chancellor in Nigeria who allocates security votes. Every month, he pays security votes to the Dean of Student Affairs without an account. In a university, you are paying money every month without an account of the money. There has never been an account of how that money was spent.
All right. Let's get on to put this in perspective. Now, what do you say to the fact that the law, Section 17(1), vests the power to remove the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Lagos? I know you said now it's not so. Is vested on the President, who is the visitor. Now, the council recommends to the President. Let me add to this the fact that the amended Universities Act of 2003 requires the council to set up a joint committee of itself and the Senate before any recommendation even to the President. Was this done? If not, why?
There are two questions you have posed.
Yeah.
Right. The first one is that you need to go to the visitor. That is the old law. If you read the University Miscellaneous Provisions Act 2009, which is the current law governing the removal of the Vice-Chancellor, it says in 8, I think it's 3(8), and I have it with me. The Vice-Chancellor may be removed from the office by the Governing Council on grounds of gross misconduct or inability to discharge his functions of his office as a result of infirmity of body or mind at the initiative of Council, Senate, or congregation after the process. That's it. That's a new law. So the law you are referring to has since been amended and no longer applies.
All right, the second part of the question.
Yes.
Okay, well, then that means, so you're saying the amended University 2003 law is now obsolete?
Yeah, it's been amended.
To 2009?
Yes.
All right, but then again...
2019.
Yeah, 2019. Did you say
2009, it's right.
Nine. He said.
Apologies.
All right. Now the next question to ask is whether the principle of fair hearing was followed. It seems Ogundipe was not giving the opportunity to defend himself.
Again, that is a false narrative. A full committee of council discovered that Ogundipe was conducting the affairs of the university in a reckless manner unbecoming of any public officer. The full committee of council then mandated a subcommittee to look into it. The subcommittee came back with a plethora of wrongdoings by Ogundipe. This committee report was forwarded to Ogundipe for his comments. Ogundipe wrote his defense in writing and he sent it to the council. He then stood up in council for 1 hour to defend himself. So anybody saying he wasn't given fair hearing doesn't even know the facts. I'm hoping that this will bring out a lot of facts so that Nigerians don't react to issues when they've not read documents.
I'm still very much, and I'm sure many of our viewers at home are still very much interested in these allegations of corruption and of looting. I wanted to ask you, Pro-Chancellor, briefly, of course, how do we get here in terms of the investigation itself? What triggered it? Because if there are allegations of him looting university monies and using that to build his own home or renovate his own home, how was he able to get away with that for so long? What was it that triggered the investigation that led to his sacking in the first place?
Okay, there are two questions in what you've said. Ogundipe is a serial offender. So soon after council was inaugurated, we were trying to appoint a director of works. Ogundipe, as chairman of the committee to appoint the director of works, chaired the occasion. It is a subcommittee of the council. He chaired the occasion. When the interview was concluded, all the parties collated their marks, and some guy from Lagos State Polytechnic came first in the interview. When we wanted to appoint a director of works, he was the chairman of the subcommittee, and after the interview process, some person from Lagos State Polytechnic came first. Ogundipe now went to collect results. When he came back, the candidate had come second because Ogundipe had altered the marks. This was an issue that was debated in council and is reflected in the minutes of the council. We had to cancel the whole process. Ogundipe altered the marks to favor a member of staff who had been indicted twice for fraud and total incompetence. It is in Ogundipe's interest to surround himself with people who cannot stand up for the truth. Ogundipe would have been removed then because forgery in a university is totally unacceptable.
So why didn't it happen?
Anywhere for that matter. Forgery anyway is totally if he forged forgery anywhere is unacceptable. It's your word. Anyway, yeah.
So, but the alumni and all the bodies of university came to appeal for Ogundipe. Please. And I said to him, look, where I'm coming from, there is zero tolerance for this. You can't do this. But the elders also came, and I said to them, we're drawing a fundamental line. We will not tolerate this type of attitude anymore. From then till it was removed, there was nothing Ogundipe did properly.
All right. Pro-Chancellor Wale, I'm at a loss. Well, it's a new info I'm getting about the 2009 law, which is not anywhere out there. Even my colleague said it was while she was discussing with you yesterday, talked about the law. Fine. But the university alumni, they're saying that the governing council should revert back to status quo and follow due process. I don't want to refer to the Act of 2003 where they talked about sections 3, 8, and 9, and then 10, and then 313, even in the appointment of an acting VC. But the comment also is that the voting process was flawed.
Okay. I'll take the two questions. First is the comment of the alumni.
Yeah.
The Alumni Association did not talk to us after our decision. The Alumni Association did not seek to know the facts of the case. I am a member of the alumni. I am a phone call away from the alumni. The alumni sits down without being briefed by a major participant and takes a decision. That itself is the ultimate breach of fair hearing. The same alumni that is complaining about due process has just committed fundamental breach of due process against the Pro-Chancellor and his team. If they had sought our interpretation or the reasons why we did this, they would have known that their statement is inaccurate. I come to the voting process. Under the standing rules of the university, voting can either be done openly or by secret ballot. There were 12 council members in attendance. When it was time to vote, I said to them, so that nobody is intimidated, it's going to be secret balloting. And in all the decisions I remember in the council, when we've come to vote, even the appointment of Ogundipe was done secretly. The marks, you wrote your own marks, and we all collated. So to have permanent record, I decided, please send your comments and votes to my WhatsApp. We came out, and I read the comments and the vote to all the council members. Not one person mentioned that his comments and votes had not been read out by the Pro-Chancellor. I still have the comments and votes on my phone. 7 people voted for Ogundipe to be relieved of his appointment. So I use the word carefully, relieved of his appointment, because I think that should be mentioned carefully.
All right.
4 people said no.
Suspension.
All the 4 people that said no are the members of management. They are the people who are involved with Ogundipe. In law, they are called participants criminals. They are people who are jointly indicted for the failure of Ogundipe's management. All the 5 representatives of government, all voted for Ogundipe's removal. All. There was no dissent. The only people who voted for Ogundipe to stay were people in his management. So the process was fair. What you have is propaganda. And honestly, I'm going to write a formal letter to the alumni that you can't even do what you're doing without saying, look, Pro-Chancellor, you're an alumnus of this university. What is the process that led to this removal? And I'll have briefed them. But you sit down without talking to the parties and take a decision. What you've done is comparable to a judge is aware that there is a dispute. And he then calls on friends of the court and says, there is a dispute between Dr. Wale Babalakin and Nduka Obaegbena. But you friends of the court, tell me what you think. Without calling Nduka Obaegbena or Dr. Wale Babalakin to come and state their case. This is the greatest breach of fair hearing. Thank you.
It appears, though, that the Senate itself, the Senate of the university, they don't appear to be in support of this decision. Yeah. Can you give us your reactions to their resolutions at this time? Because on the one hand, while we can talk about corruption being a bad thing, absolutely bad, we have to also realize, as we've been talking throughout this conversation, that there is due process. Opportunities need to be given, must be given to people when they are accused of misdoings to be able to defend themselves. And it appears as though the Senate isn't in agreement with you on this issue. What do you have to say to that?
Thank you very much once again. You see, what we're trying to bring to UNILAG is due process, is following the law. There was no Senate meeting. Under the standing rules, it's the Vice-Chancellor that can summon a Senate meeting. At the time the Vice-Chancellor purported to summon a Senate meeting, he was no longer Vice-Chancellor. His actions were illegal. So there was no Senate meeting. What you have was that there was a debating society that came up with some resolutions, but not the Senate of the university. The Senate of the university has not met for the last 4 months, not even for their statutory meetings, which they usually hold once a month. Then you wake up because one of you is being removed, call a Senate meeting, the same person who has been removed, call the Senate meeting, and you say, this is the resolution of Senate. I mean, this is really, really abysmally poor. Even the registrar, who is the Secretary of Senate, was not there. So please, I think we should not allow rabble-rousing to replace law and process.
I agree with you. Even though we must add that And you will agree with us that this is your side of the story. Now, the Committee of Vice Chancellors have condemned both the sacking of the Vice Chancellor Gundipe and the appointment of Soyombo as acting Vice Chancellor. They say it's outside the university's 3 deputy Vice Chancellors. They also are saying due process again comes up, that phrase, that due process was not followed.
Okay. I'm very happy that I was called on I was allowed by Arise to come this morning, because I'm really happy to be able to clarify the issues. You have asked about 3 questions or 2. I'll break them down. The first is that the Committee of Vice Chancellors said that we did not follow due process. Now, the Committee of Vice Chancellors could easily have placed a call to the Pro-Chancellor to say that we have heard about this, we want to know your own side of the story. Like the alumni, what they've just done is sit in judgment over issues they don't have the facts. Interestingly, I used to be chairman committee of Pro-Chancellors, so I know the relationship between the 2 committees. We are a phone call away from each other. So I will urge you to discount what the Committee of Vice Chancellors have said, because it's not based on empirical facts. The second thing is that they thought we could have appointed one of the deputy Vice Chancellors. At the time this decision took place, there was no deputy Vice Chancellor. One term had expired, and the Senate had not brought him back, had not re-elected him to come to the council. 2 remaining had not been confirmed. Council's position was that they were part of this management that engaged in financial recklessness, gross misconduct, and council had not confirmed them. So there was no serving deputy vice chancellor that could have been appointed. This could easily have been clarified to the Committee of Vice Chancellors, but they didn't seek to ask. Thank you.
If we look at the institution itself, if we look at the University of Lagos, how has it been affected? Obviously, we know that we're in the throes of a pandemic. The university grounds itself is probably a shadow of what it usually is. Classes aren't going on. But in terms of the effect on the institution itself with these allegations of looting, of mismanagement, how has the University of Lagos been affected by this?
You see, I wear 2 caps. I'm the lead negotiator for the federal government with the unions on how to improve the university. And the unions are clamoring for more money, that education is underfunded. And I'm listening to this, okay? Then I'm Pro-Chancellor. As Pro-Chancellor, I'm seeing that, yes, funding is a challenge, but the little funds that are brought to the university are mismanaged. University of Lagos, well managed, can become a university comparable to any university in Africa within a couple of years. It has the resources, but it must be managed properly. I must let you know that as Pro-Chancellor, I do not collect any allowance from the university. I do not cost the university any penny. I've never asked the university for anything, not even for a ticket. Even when I cater in my residence, I bring my catering from outside. Because we've come to serve. We've come to change things. We've not come to do it as usual. So the resistance you are seeing is because we've come to change things fundamentally from a cultural decadence that has been in existence for over 15 years.
Well, that one rang a bell. The fact that you've not taken anything and the fact of change and service, it really rang a bell. But the Ministry of Education, through its Director of Press, Ben Gung, said the Council is yet to brief the Ministry on the so-called removal of Ogundibe. Is this true?
No. It was true when the statement was issued, but it's no longer true. because the council has written to the ministry to brief the ministry. But it was true when the statement was made. Remember, it was removed on Wednesday, and we then have to put our papers together to brief the ministry, and we've since done that.
Okay, let me get back to this 2009 law so we don't miss it. Are you then saying, as it stands today with the 2009 law, which after the program we'd like to get a copy, is very important, so if we can, that the president is no longer the visitor of University of Lagos?
The president is the visitor of the University of Lagos.
Good.
But he has no role in the removal of principal officers, including the vice-chancellor. The role he has is after the removal, if you have a complaint, then you will forward the complaint to the visitor through the Minister of Education. And I've actually forwarded the law to the producer. It's with her now.
Oh, good.
I forwarded it.
Oh, good. Fantastic.
Pro-Chancellor, I can't imagine that with all of this scandal going on that you'd, or anybody, or many people would expect Professor Ogundipe to, I guess, stroll off into the darkness and not to be heard of again. So with this, it seems, a tussle between the two sides. What is next? Do you think that we will need to have intervention from the Nigeria's Department of Education? How do we move forward? Because it seems as though this is going to be a fight that will continue unless a mediator comes in and tries to resolve the situation. So as it stands, do you anticipate mediation coming? And do you think that there will be an issue where Professor Ogundipe would reclaim his place as Vice-Chancellor?
You see, it's my duty to do my side of the work. I can't exceed my mandate. But I must, on this platform, commend the ministry for the caliber of people it appointed to council as federal government nominees. They are the most selfless people I have worked with for a long time. Secondly, there is no crisis in UNILAG. What you have is there's a vocal minority with resources distorting the atmosphere and creating an impression of crisis. If you have a secret ballot in University of Lagos today, Ogundipe will not win 15% of the votes. But he can hype the media, he can run around. I mean, you see a vice-chancellor doing a rally with ASU. I mean,
I was going to come to ASU. Now you just raised that issue. And well, about voting, you never know. You never know. What you see on the surface might not be the way it is on the ground. But let's talk about ASU. What do you make of the fact that ASU is also not siding with the decisions you have made? And let me add this, why is it so difficult, the way it seems, for the management of the university on the one hand, and the governing council to harmonize their actions instead of being at loggerheads for the betterment of the University of Lagos, I must say?
There are two questions.
Yep.
The first is ASU. I will not comment about ASU. The problem with ASU in Lagos branch is that I'm not sure there is anybody who guides them about the Constitution. Someday, ASU declared that I was persona non grata and I should never enter the campus. Go and read the Constitution. Everybody has freedom of movement. So that action was illegal. And if the system were very, very active, somebody there should have been questioned by the authorities. Now, secondly, ASU did not even abide by the Trade Union Act, which says that you cannot physically restrain anybody during a trade dispute. What you can do is picket. Picket means you can sit down somewhere and be demonstrating, but you cannot physically restrain them. Then I have the Constitution of ASU, One of the things ASU promotes is freedom of expression and freedom of movement. So ASU is, again, violating its own constitution. So I shouldn't say anything about ASU other than to say they should seek legal advice.
Then the second part.
Yeah.
The second part.
Which is?
Which is why it's so difficult from our standpoint for the management of the university and the governing council to harmonize their actions instead of being at loggerheads for the good of the University of Lagos.
There is no... Describing as a loggerhead is unfair.
Okay.
What you have is that you have a council with majority of the members saying, let's follow due process, let's do things according to law, let's spend the university money judiciously, let's improve this university. Then you have a culture represented by Ogundikpe. Let us filter away the money, let us mismanage this place, let us create a charade, and that's where we are. Let me shock you. The first budget that was presented to me as Pro-Chancellor in university, the amount of internally generated revenue and the amount of recurrent expenditure were equal. So every money that was generated was spent without improving the university. Everyone was spent without improving the university. So how do you reconcile this type of people? The alumni spoke to me on a few occasions, and I said, what are you telling me? I should compromise forgery? I should compromise stealing? I should come and fly breach of process? What if there is a visitation tomorrow and they say, Pro-Chancellor, all this happened under you. What did you do? I will say that ASU's alumni spoke to me and I compromised. That will be bad for me.
And your reputation.
Yes. So let me give you another word. There is, I'm a lawyer and I can be sued for libel. I challenge Ogundikpe to sue me that I've libeled him. That I said that he is financially reckless, he does not appreciate process, and that he is not fit and proper to be a vice chancellor of a university. Let him challenge me.
That's heavy.
Yeah.
It is heavy. Indeed, you cannot slander someone or be accused of libel with the truth.
Yes.
However, hypothetically speaking, we are running out of time, but hypothetically speaking, you describe Professor Ogundikpe as being the figurehead of impunity at the University of Lagos. Do you, hypothetically speaking, of course, because we don't know that to be true, but do you think that he is alone? And even with his removal, does that mean all of the impunity is gone, all of the alleged corruption and looting is over? Or is there still more work to be done?
You see, Nigeria has a serious followership culture. If the leadership is doing things right, most of the followers will follow. If the leadership is doing something wrong, most of the followers will follow. So, if Ogundikpe has been removed, I believe that this will send a message to the university system in Nigeria that you don't sit down and just run the university to the detriment of the people.
Thank you so much, Pro-Chancellor Wale Babalakin, for your time on the show to give us your part of what's been happening. Thank you so much.